friends, it's Pixie. Welcome back to my home. It's been a little while. I've read some books, I've done some drawing, as per usual, taken lots of naps. And yesterday I saw Emma Tobias again, very inspirational booktuber for me. She posted a video with a tag she invented called the Little Less Lonely tag. And that just really hit home for me because, I think we've all read to feel less lonely, to feel seen and connect with characters in books. And that's also why we use social media, right? To feel less lonely, particularly this year when many of us have been more isolated than we might have liked to. So I just thought it was a really nice tag and I wanted to do it. And I am able to fit into it a couple books I've read very recently that I haven't talked to you about, so I'm excited about that as well. So the first question is, a classic that got you where you related to the characters. And I have two books for this. I felt like I wouldn't be genuine if I didn't mention the book that every emo kid read and related to, and that is The Catcher in the Rye, of course. I'm slightly embarrassed about this because if you read this book, you know that Holden, the main character, is really annoying. But we kind of related to him because he's just annoyed also with everything and swears a lot and feels that everything is pointless, and he's just very teenage. And you read it as a teenager and you're like, wow, I feel seen. So, yeah. Sadly, The Catcher in the Rye. But also a book I read more recently. I have the Swedish translation here. The English translation is called Love of Worker Bees by Alexandra Kollontai. So she was on the Central Committee of the Bolshevik Party at the time of the October Revolution in Russia. And this book came out in, when was it? 1923 in Russia. And it's about women navigating relationships and politics in early Soviet Russia when, with the attempts to build socialism. Because at this point, the bureaucracy and Stalin's tyranny hadn't taken hold yet. But you can see in this book, you can see that the bureaucratic tendencies have started to develop. So that was really interesting as well. Obviously, it's a first-hand account. But what really made me feel like seen by Kollontai is that she depicts these women as they care a lot about their relationships and they will sacrifice a lot. Some might say too much to be with the person they love. But love can never take priority over building socialism. It can never take priority over the fight for a better world. And that is also how I feel if I ever had to make that choice, which I hope I will not have to. And it was also, I really enjoyed it. I read some reviews on Goodreads that thought it wasn't well written and mostly interesting as a historical document kind of thing. And I definitely agree that it is interesting as a historical document, but I thought it was really engaging and I read it in one sitting because I got so invested in it, which I think is a good review. Next is a book that surprised you. And I have talked about this book before, so I won't be long, but Run by Cody Keplinger surprised me with how much it affected me, because I had just read a young adult book that I didn't super enjoy, so I thought maybe I'm too old. And I read this and it just really hit home, and I cried, and it was beautiful. I will link to the video where I talk about this in depth, if you're interested in what the book is about. Then, also a recent read, Elatsoe by Darcy Little Badger. I talked about this in my October TBR. I didn't end up reading it during October, but I did read it now in November as a buddy read with Alicia Reeds, which was really fun and really deepened the experience, because we would talk about it every few chapters. So I would kind of make note of things to talk to her about, which I think made me just engage more with the book rather than just speeding through it to get to know what happens, because it was really exciting, and every time I had to stop I just wanted to keep reading. It was really intense, and I was about to say fun, but it deals with some heavy topic like messy, chaotic grief and sort of bad-natured human ghosts and death and colonialism and racism. So it's a lot, it was intense. And the thing is, I did expect to like this book based on what I had heard about it, but it was so much more than I had anticipated. It had the same vibe that China Miéville's books have, where there are just so many cool, interesting ideas that I just mentioned in passing, and you get the feeling that this world is just really big, really interesting, and there's so much to explore. So for example, in this book, vampirism exists, but it's kind of unconventional. For example, a vampire isn't dead, they are a cursed living person, and there's like a state department that overlooks like vampire issues. And there's also like teleportation between fairy rings, but fairy teleportation is bad for the environment, and like tons of stuff like that. And at the same time, we are in our modern day world with like cell phones and Google Maps and stuff like that, which you know I love, because I say that all the time, but I really love it. It was a really great book. I thought I would like it, but it surprised me just how much I loved it. So that's how I shoehorned this in there. I really recommend it if you enjoy fantasy, or if you enjoy societal commentary, or if you enjoy vampires, or if you want a book without love interest and without a love side plot, because I really appreciated that too, and that surprised me as well, that I didn't have to deal with that. But it turns out that Elatsoe is asexual, which I didn't know when I went into it, so that was a pleasant surprise. Elatsoe, super recommend. So the next question is a book that you read at just the right time, and I thought about this, and I brought out both my copies of De Profundis. I don't know how to pronounce it, by Oscar Wilde. I actually have a third copy as well. So just that tells you something, I think. So this is the copy that I read at the right time, and this is a new copy I have purchased to reread. And I still haven't reread it, but I still plan to. So that time was in 2014. I was traveling and staying with friends from Tumblr all over the world. I wasted all my savings on this trip because I just, I was in a very deep depressive episode, and when I realized maybe I could just leave and go somewhere, I didn't want to die as much, so I decided to use up that money instead of saving it for a future that I didn't feel like I had. So I did. And I bought this secondhand and read it while I was traveling across the US. And in it, so this is the letter that he wrote in prison to his former lover, Bosie. And he writes about suffering and about creating art and about everything that Bosie did to him. It just really hit home for me, partly about suffering and partly about creating, because also at this time I was starting to revive my will to create again, because I hadn't been creative for a long time, and that wasn't the right way for me to live my life. Like, I'm not happy when I'm not making things. So I was finding my way back to that, and Oscar Wilde was just what I needed at that time. The next question is a book that inspires you. And really any book by Helen Oyeyemi. But I just the other day finished Gingerbread. It's just such an experience to read her work. I feel like she always makes my brain wrinkle in completely new ways. And I really love that feeling, and it's not every author that can do that. Like, the way she writes, even when she writes about awful things, she just handles language in a way that I would describe as joyful. It's just so, it's adventurous and playful and fun. And like, I would describe it as literary, but I wouldn't say it's pretentious. I would just, I would say weird, and I know it's not for everyone. And like, on an intellectual level, I understand that and I can respect it. But on a more visceral level, I'm also kind of offended that she isn't recognized as a genius, because I really think she is. I don't know, her books just inspire me because they make me think in new ways. They make my brain feel bigger and make me feel like there are so many possibilities that have never occurred to me. And it's just a wonderful feeling to have. And I just found out yesterday that she is coming out with a new book next year. So I still have something to look forward to, which is good in these times. And for the question of a book that calms me, I am cheating, and it's my sketchbook. But I think that counts. I just like to draw, and it calms me down. And I don't know if there's much more to say about that, but it's a book, and it calms me. So there. The last question is a book that brings the nostalgia. And I hope the whole book can fit on screen. This was my favorite book as a child. And it's got windows on every page. So you can always like see to the next scene. And I love that the text is like handwritten, and I love this graphic, colorful style. And look, there's a hole in the little thing, and they come out, and you can look back. And it's all just, oh no, this one is also falling apart. I just really love this book, and every time I see it, I just think about when my mom would read it to me. And then when I learned to read, I would read ahead and turn the page before she was done. And I would also correct her pronunciation. She's hard of hearing, so sometimes she said an extra letter in a word that wasn't there in the text. And once I learned to read, I realized that, so I would correct her. That makes me sound like a big asshole child, which I maybe was, but not because of that, because my mom did want me to let her know, just so you know. So those were some books that made me feel a little less lonely. I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about them. I hope you had a nice time here with me. I hope you're feeling a little less lonely. So thank you for spending some time with me. Videos also help make me feel less lonely. So I really appreciate that. And you take care of yourself, and I will see you next time.